Welcome to the 538 Elections Podcast. My name is Jody Avergan. Let's have a little conversation around this question that we like to ask, which is good use of polling or bad use of polling, where we look at how a candidate or someone in the media or a pollster have used polling. And this week, folks, I know you're excited, this is the first mention of a word that is on everyone's 538 bingo card, and that word is unskew. So let's take a listen to a clip actually first, and then we'll get into what exactly skewing or unskewing of polls is. So this is from a CNN segment hosted by Brian Stelter, who had a group of Trump supporters on, and the voice you'll hear first here is Amy Kremer, who is the co-chair of Women Vote Trump. And here she is talking about the polls.
You know, polling can be skewed, too, by the way the questions are answered, the number of Democrats versus Republicans that are polled. I mean, so you can't say that there's not any bias in the polling, because I believe there certainly is. But I think that
now,
after...
People are going to hear you say that, Amy, and say this is a repeat of unskewed polls from 2012, which hurt Mitt Romney. The belief that the polls were skewed against Romney actually hurt his campaign, because supporters were convinced he was going to win when he wasn't.
So that's the exchange from CNN this past weekend, and we'll get into a little bit, maybe if we want, of the 2012 stuff, Harry, but tell me about this notion of unskewing.
He's shaking his head.
I know,
listeners.
You're shaking your head, but if you can just explain what the general idea of skewed and unskewed polls is, and then we'll set you loose to talk about what you think of it.
Talk to us like we're real stupid.
So, I mean, there are many ways that a poll could be, quote-unquote, skewed.
Air quotes.
But the way that most people, or most back in 2012 Romney fans and this year Trump fans are claiming that the polls are skewed is that there are too many Democrats in them. So what every national poll tends to ask is, do you identify more with the Democratic Party, Republican Party, or do you identify more as an independent? And sometimes then they say, okay, if you identify as an independent, which party do you lean towards more? And pretty much all of the polls right now have more people identifying as Democrats than Republicans. And this leads people to say, oh, that's an unequal balance. They should be equal. Therefore, the polls that show Clinton ahead that have more Democrats in them, they are biased. Now, I heard this in 2012 as well. Now, here are the problems with this. Mm-hmm. There are two basic problems. Number one is that pollsters, most public pollsters, do not weight by party identification. It is not a demographic. It is an attitude, okay? We don't weight by attitudes. That would be almost like saying, okay, this poll has too many Hillary Clinton supporters, therefore we need to wait and ensure that there are fewer Hillary Clinton supporters. It doesn't make any sense, right? So pollsters just don't weight by that. They weight by demographics such as age.
When you say weight, they take their sample and they adjust according to what we know about the nature of our country.
That's right. So if you were to take a national poll, for instance, at the baseline, most national pollsters would do is they'd take a sample of adults, which they could weight towards the census or the American Community Survey. That's part of the census or part of the United States, what the government asks. And then they say, are you a registered voter? And then we know that. And then they might ask her, they have some likely voter scale. But it's all weighted to known statistics that can easily be figured out very, very quickly. Now, there are other ways of doing that, but that's the basic way that most national polls do it. Perhaps what's even more interesting, though, is if we were to weight by historical data, which, again, I don't suggest that we do, but if you were to go back to every single presidential election since 1952, what the American National Election Studies can do for you, it turns out that in every single election that they have taken polls on, more voters who voted in the presidential election self-identified as Democrats than Republicans. It would actually be more unusual if there were more Republicans or an equal number of Republicans as Democrats.
So if you look at a poll and you see that, gosh, there are more people who identified as Democrats than Republicans in this sample, one, you're saying that's not that unusual because that's the nature of the United States, but also a pollster isn't actually they don't care about that.
That's right. Most pollsters do not care about that. Now, there's some that do weight by party ID, but most of the pollsters that are in the 538 pollster ratings who rank highly do not weight by party identification. It's just simply not something that's done. Some do it, but most don't.
There is weighting, right? And I think that kind of gets to that's where the sort of slippery slope begins. That pollsters are going in and they are tweaking.
A lot of them
right?
are trying to apply like census data, right? Like to reflect demographics.
Right. So what you might have is that, if you're looking at a national poll, for instance, there may be some weighting, some adjustments that are made. For instance, pollsters find it difficult to get many young people in them. So they might weight the number of young people in their poll upward than who they were able to contact.
This idea of unskewing, this notion being that what you should actually do with a poll is if you see a sort of consistent Clinton bias in a poll, it shows that it is consistently in favor and it needs to be pushed back in the other direction. A lot of people have been flagging this website for us called Long Room, which kind of does this. If they see a bunch of polls that are consistently showing for Clinton, then they say, oh, there's a clear bias here. We do a little bit of that, though, right? We have this thing called the House effect, where if a pollster is consistently in favor of Hillary Clinton, we dock them a couple points. So we don't put that on the continuum for them.
Right. We don't dock them. What we essentially say is we adjust them to what the average poll is.